Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the truly fascinating neuroscience of two drugs that dismantle reality in visually similar, yet biologically complete opposite ways. We're putting salvia and ketamine side by side. By the time we wrap up, you'll know exactly how these two totally different substances hack the brain to completely strip away a person's reality. Let's get into it. So think of our normal waking state of consciousness, our sense of self and our immediate environment as a locked door. The big question we're tackling today is how in the world can the brain be hacked to forget the self, to essentially unlock that door to dissociation using two completely different chemical keys? Here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, two roads to dissociation. Number 2, divergent doors, the receptors. 3, contrasting experiences and durations. 4, the therapeutic inversion. And finally, number 5, very different hazard profiles. All right, Section 1, two roads to dissociation, the shared destination of a dismantled reality. To an outside observer, someone at the peak of a salvia experience and someone deep in a ketamine experience might look like they are in the exact same spot. I mean, they are both in a state of profound dissociation, stepping entirely outside of consensus reality. Brain imaging actually gives us a massive clue here. Both of these substances attenuate the brain's default mode network. That's the self-referential system of your brain. So purely on an experiential level, they both pull the self and its world completely apart. But here is the absolute paradox. They share the same destination, sure, but they are completely different in almost every other way. We're talking an ancient ethnobotanical mint versus a synthetic 1960s anesthetic. Their pharmacology, how long they last, and especially their emotional tones are drawn from entirely different scientific literatures. They just happen to rhyme in their final subjective state. It's wild. Moving right along to Section 2, divergent doors, the receptors. Opposite pharmacology for the same outcome. First off, it's super important to note that neither of these drugs touches the serotonin receptors used by your classic psychedelics like LSD or psilocybin. But chemically, wow, look at how different they are. Salvinorin A, the active compound in salvia, is a total structural oddball. It's a plant terpenoid that doesn't even have a basic nitrogen atom. That is incredibly rare for a central nervous system drug. Ketamine, on the other hand, maintains a much more traditional molecular structure, complete with that standard basic nitrogen atom. So what really matters is how they interact with the brain's architecture. Salvinorin A is remarkably clean. It hits a single target. It binds as a highly selective agonist, like over 5,000-fold selective, for the kappa-opioid receptor. Now, I know the word opioid might sound some alarm bells, but this is a completely separate system from the mu-opioid system that drives the reward and respiratory depression of things like morphine and heroin. The kappa-opioid receptor instead triggers a stress and aversion circuit. It is quite literally the brain's built-in dysphoria switch. Then you have ketamine, which works on the complete opposite side of the excitatory ledger. It's an NMDA-receptor antagonist, meaning where salvia actively flips on an aversive opioid switch, ketamine physically sits inside and jams an open glutamate channel, creating a totally different chemical reality in your brain. And this brings us to ketamine's defining disinhibition hypothesis, which is just brilliant. Blocking that NMDA receptor selectively silences inhibitory interneurons. Essentially, it takes the brakes off. This unleashes a massive glutamate surge in the prefrontal cortex. That surge then kicks off a chain reaction involving growth factors like BDNF and mTOR, creating a plasticity cascade that literally grows new dendritic spines and synapses. It's rewiring the brain on the fly. Let's look at Section 3, contrasting experiences and durations. A brief, jagged detonation versus a longer, immersive drift. As you might guess, the subjective contrast here is incredibly sharp, and it's heavily driven by pharmacokinetics. Because salvia is so rapidly broken down by esterase enzymes in the body, its trip is one of the shortest in the entire psychoactive world. When it's smoked, it hits peak brain concentration in just about 40 seconds. 40 seconds! With a brain half-life of roughly 8 minutes, it is an abrupt, overwhelming detonation. Ketamine, whether given IV, IM, or intranasally, offers a much more extended, lingering drift. Those effects slowly unfold and resolve over about 45 to 90 minutes. The emotional colorings, polar opposites. Because salvia activates that kappa-opioid receptor, it inherently drives dysphoria and anxiety. This makes the salvia experience characteristically aversive, bizarre, and frankly, sometimes terrifying. Ketamine's sub-anesthetic state, which is driven by that glutamate plasticity cascade we talked about, is totally different. It's often described as dreamy, floaty, and frequently euphoric.
Okay, Section 4, the therapeutic inversion. A mirror image of psychiatric outcomes.
This is where things get really fascinating for psychiatry. We are looking at a true therapeutic mirror image. Ketamine's glutamate-driven plasticity directly led to a blockbuster treatment. Its S enantiomer, S-ketamine, is actually FDA approved for depression and was even cleared as a monotherapy recently in 2025. Now, logically, drug developers thought, hey, if a KOR agonist like Salvia causes dysphoria, let's run Salvia's target in reverse. Let's use KOR antagonists to cure depression. Makes sense, right? Well, in reality, both major flagship phase 3 trials, aticaprant and navacaprant, failed spectacularly in 2025 and 2026. Meanwhile, salvinorin analogs are just sitting there, entirely stuck in the preclinical phase for pain and anti-addiction. So this isn't just a fun theory. This actually dictates why some people heal and others just hallucinate. It highlights a really profound medical reality. The kappa-opioid system is a massively complex scientific frontier. Trying to directly block the brain's endogenous dysphoria circuit seemed like a brilliant idea on paper, but translating that into functional medicine for real human beings, it's proven incredibly, frustratingly difficult. It is a massive, humbling cautionary tale for neuropharmacology, proving that our brains are far, far more complex than just a simple set of chemical switches.
And that brings us to Section 5, very different hazard profiles. Psychological acute risks versus physiological tail risks.
Let's start with Salvia. Its risks are highly acute and highly situational. Remember, because it lacks mu-opioid action, there's no respiratory depression or your classic overdose risk. Plus, because it's so intensely dysphoric, it has incredibly low dependence liability. People just do not want to do it again. So the real danger is almost entirely situational. It's the risk of severe physical injury, like falling or burning yourself, during those few terrifying, completely disoriented minutes of the peak. Ketamine, on the flip side, is all about cumulative pharmacological risk. These tail risks build up over time with repeated exposure. Because it can be euphoric, it absolutely carries genuine abuse and dependence liability. What's more, heavy, sustained misuse can lead to some really severe, irreversible physiological damage. We're talking serious bladder toxicity, known as ketamine-induced ulcerative cystitis, along with transient cardiovascular spikes in blood pressure and heart rate. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought about the future of neuropharmacology. How is it that we can so effectively hack the brain's plasticity and treat depression through ketamine's glutamate pathways, yet we remain so completely humbled by the brain's deeply entrenched kappa-opioid dysphoria circuits? It really goes to show just how much of the mind's architecture is still left to be discovered. Thanks for exploring this mystery with me.